October 25, 2023. Well, we don't have a whole lot of updates on. Well, I could get into some things on the various conflicts in the world like I normally do, but on this video I have something a little different. We'll get back to the UFO UAP topic, which I occasionally drop into, and I just come across something here. That's kind of interesting, kind of breaking pretty quickly. I may be a little bit behind the curve on it, but it's very, very interesting and notable and worth discussing. And essentially, it has to do with this James Lacatski. Now, the name you might recall is it was the director of the AASWAP program, which was the program that was funded by Congress by three senators. Had got this created as kind of, I think, an earmark that got stuck in the defense budget, and had this interesting, name, that suggested it was some kind of a, well, I don't know, aerospace development project of some type. At any rate, and then of course ATIP was spun off from that after it ran out of money, and of course this is the guy who basically had recruited Lou Elizondo to be the security manager for the AASWAP program right before it ended, and apparently he took it on to continue to do investigations with routine funding they had to do, check on various things. But the big project, which had employed like 50 people and was contracted out to Bigelow Aerospace, that had ended. Well, anyhow, he's come forward now and has written a second book, which basically is it goes into a bit more detail on the AASWAP program. Now, this book is titled "Inside the U.S. Government Covert UFO Program: Initial Revelations" by James Lacatski, Com Kelleher, and George Knapp, of course, the journalist that covers all this stuff so much. And at any rate, anyway, that's the source. And at any rate, in chapter 9 of this book, there's an interesting statement that is in here. Remember, this book was, because of Lacatski's security background, had to go through DOPSR, the agency in the DOD that has to clear things for release from people that have that level of clearance. And it reads as such: at the conclusion of a 2011 meeting in the Capitol building with a U.S. Senator and an agency Undersecretary, Lacatski, the only one of the book's authors present, posed a question. He stated that the United States was in possession of a craft of unknown origin, which had successfully gained access to its interior. The craft had a streamlined configuration suitable for aerodynamic flight, but no intakes, exhaust, wings, or control surfaces. In fact, it appeared not to have an engine, fuel tanks, or fuel. Lacatski asked, what was the purpose of this craft? Was it a life support craft useful only for atmospheric reentry, or what? Or was it a spacecraft? Then how did it operate? So anyhow, this is a pretty profound statement. Now, and of course, this did get through the security review, which is kind of interesting. I have an interesting thought on this, because when you first look at this thing, if you don't read it really carefully, you might almost see it's like he's asking a hypothetical question, sort of like if we had such a craft. But in fact, he stated clearly that we do have such a craft, presumably the U.S. government or some agency that the DIA is familiar with. So that's very interesting. And it represents a third indication, I think, that we actually clearly do have such UFOs in our possession. But if you like these videos, please give me a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and of course you can click the bell for notifications. So anyhow, because you see, he clearly says that we do have the craft when you really look at it. I kind of wonder, is that how it got through DOPSR, that they misread it and didn't realize what he was saying? Or there's another possibility I could get into, but because it's kind of weird that, I mean, isn't this the real secret of UFOs, that they're real? I mean, once you admit that they're real, I mean, what else is the big secret that we really know, since we probably don't know so much about them, but maybe there is something. Anyhow, I just thought that was fascinating. Now, of course, the other people who I'm referring to, the third, well, you have the Admiral Wilson case, uh, where he was told that in fact we do have a craft not of this earth, and Eric Davis, of course, related this conversation, and the memo, of course, was found in the papers of Edgar Mitchell. This was something not to go public, but it did, because the man passed away, and people with the papers didn't have the same objective of keeping this secret, so to speak. And then, of course, we have David Grush, who came out with his, complaint to the Inspector General of the Intelligence Agency, and his interview on with magazine there, and then also on the news thing, So you've got those situations. And now, of course, this here, you have Lacatski, who is highly cleared into the subject, right? And the Defense Intelligence Agency flat out saying that we have such a craft. Remember, even Elizondo never said that. So, and that's a very interesting situation. I think that, in fact, this is perhaps the most explicit statement of a cleared individual yet. And the fact that this was officially past the DOPSR review is a bit surprising. I tend to think that maybe they didn't read that paragraph quite right and thought he was saying, if we had it, what would it be for? And got the questions, got him confused with the fact he clearly stated in this that, in fact, that we do have that. In fact, and of course, an interview with Knapp and, and Jeremy Corbell, he's confronted with his statement there, and he doesn't deny that at all. He sticks by that. He won't elaborate any further. So, like I say, I wonder if this one didn't kind of slip through, because historically, things that probably shouldn't have slipped out have sometimes got out in these reviews. I think a lot of what we know about details of, for instance, things like nuclear weapons, I think got out that way, where somebody was failing to properly review something, or, I mean, there are things like that I've seen before. Let's put it that way, that are in the unclassified literature, and of course there are things I don't know were classified, but I'm pretty sure they would be, since I didn't know what they were, for real. But you still, I never worked in the field, say, of nuclear weapons, but I still kind of a funny feeling, why would you put that in the public domain? I think that a lot of that was kind of, got out accidentally. And I kind of wonder if this didn't kind of slip through. We'll see how that goes. I'm be interested to see if Congress wants to invite him to testify also. And that'll be interesting. Now, apparently they're going to get a SCIF, if I understand it, so they can have classified briefings on this subject. I guess maybe the Intelligence Committee chairman finally relented a little bit, although he's been really, on the House side, has been opposing this sort of thing. So, but at any rate, I just thought that was an interesting development here. That it also is kind of interesting. What's more in here, when you really think about it, what's actually being described is that once they got inside of this thing and looked at it, they really can't obviously make any sense of how it really works, I think, since it doesn't have any of the features we normally would expect a flying craft to have, and yet we're pretty sure it probably flew, right? And probably flew quite well. So that leads us to a whole bunch of new speculation. I think it supports a little bit of my own, thinking that this reverse engineering thing is a little overstated. What we're really doing, maybe we're more like trying to or studying it, but actually achieving it, perhaps not. We'll see how that goes. I mean, if in fact we have succeeded in that area on a rudimentary level, but not very effectively, then I can see why it would become a very sensitive issue, because until you really field it, you know what I'm saying. The things in development are the things that sort of have a lot of sensitivity. But my guess, it's more like we're stumped. but that's my opinion. One other thing that in the interview that I mentioned it was on the Weaponized Podcast. I failed to mention it earlier with with Corbell and George Knapp. He does present the idea. He sort of challenges the idea that these programs, the what's sometimes referred to as the UFO program or the legacy UFO program, Lacatski kind of pushes back against the idea that these are actually illegal, as have I in previous video when I discussed it, because it's my opinion that may be a case for the Supreme Court if anybody really wants to challenge that, because these programs were probably created originally by presidential order, probably years ago, back in the Truman or Eisenhower periods, and have probably continued ever since then. And probably less of the more recent people have been briefed into it at the presidential level, because why stir up a thing that was working pretty good for them? And of course, a lot of rules have changed since then, and I don't know. We'll see whether or not anybody really is in any trouble over this. It depends on what happened. If some of the claims that have been come out, like the things about, threatening people's lives or even killing people, if that's really true, that's a whole different issue. But we'll have to wait and see what comes next. But at any rate, I think that this is a fascinating development that ought to be considered, that we have a third source, and perhaps the most authoritative source, flat out saying we have one of these things. Now, of course, other sources claim we have several of these things. But anyway, I'll kind of wrap this up for now and get back probably to my normal topics in the next video. Of course, we're still stuck without a speaker, and the situation in the Middle East is still pretty stalemated, with a hostage crisis kind of dominating the military action. But anyway, so I'll be posting this on Rumble as well, of course, as you're on YouTube. And of course, you can follow me on my social media accounts. Particularly, I post most frequently on X. And until next time.